Hello everybody and welcome back to my garage 0 Hero. Right, so we are here at the junkyard as you can see, and I've been a little bit busy this morning getting some parts for the 1970 Chevelle that we need. So we've got a fender, a hood, front bumper, and also the grill insert is right over there. And then I've also got some new parts back here like the shock absorbers and also the firewall and some, basically new suspension parts for the front end. So we are going to try and sort out the front end of this car at least today. But yes, we do need to strip off quite a bit of parts in order to get that firewall mounted. But yes, for now we're just going to fire up our pickup truck over here and we're going to head back to our shop and see what else we can get busy with today. Alright, and we are back at the shop, and let's just remember our toolbox in the back of our truck over here. So I think we can just put this on the table outside, because I think we're gonna probably pull the 1968 Dodge Charger outside. I think it's gonna be a little bit easier for us to work on it out here under the little carport instead of inside the garage. But yes, as you can see, I also moved our Chevy Chevelle over to the 2-post lift, and yeah, it's basically just hanging around here for now. So we're gonna see if we can start digging into this thing a little bit today. I wanna see if we can start stripping this thing, because we need to replace the firewall. So that's gonna require a whole lot of parts that needs to come off before we can get to that. So yes, I think let's quickly just offload our pickup truck and get everything sort of mocked up where it needs to be, and then yeah, we're gonna start working on TC's Dodge Charger first of all. Alright, so that is the last part. So yeah, we've got quite a bit of parts for our Chevy Chevelle over here to try and put this thing back together. So I did have a bit of a word with TC, and yeah, the engine that's going to come out of the Dodge Charger over here, he says the engine is perfect. We are just going to rebuild this engine, or not really rebuild this engine, but build a whole new engine for this car. So the engine in this Dodge Charger, we are going to be able to use it in our 70 Chevelle. So it's definitely going to save us a bit of time trying to build up an engine for the car, as well as trying to source the engine would also cost a bit of money. So we're just going to go ahead and use this one because it actually runs and drives quite well. So we're just gonna pull this 1969 or 68 Dodge Charger. Yeah, this is also a 68 Dodge Charger. Just gonna pull it over here under the carport so that we can start tearing into this thing. So there's going to be a whole lot of things happening to this car. So firstly, we are going to bring our plasma cutter out as well, because we're gonna definitely cut some body panels off today. So I think what we're going to start with is probably getting the roof, basically cut off, because we're going to replace the roof. So I think the first thing in order for us to start cutting on this thing would be to remove the battery from the car. So let's just unbolt the battery, and just like that. Alright, so we're going to just pop this on the table over there. Should be nice and safe. Alright, so let's have a look at cutting this thing up. So I want to maybe open the doors, and let's just also turn the light on so we can see what we are doing. Alright, so we're going to open this door as well, and we're going to see where all the welds are for this roof again. I recently worked on one of these, but yeah, it's kind of hard to memorize all of these welds that you need to cut on these cars. So we're just going to go ahead and try cutting the obvious ones and see if that is going to free up our vinyl roof over here, which it does. So yeah, there we go. So that is quite a nice guess. So we've got the old bent roof off the car, so we're going to be replacing this with a normal painted roof. So we're just going to put that down over there. We might saw some parts off it. It all depends if we are going to get a replacement roof from a donor vehicle or whether we are going to just go ahead and buy a new roof. So that'll all depend. But I think for now we're going to have a lot of parts that we can actually bolt off of this car. So next up we are going to grab our wrench and we're just going to start unbolting parts. I think let's start at the front end. We are going to start with the front bumper. So these bolts, I do recall the ones on the sides are also ones we need to take off. So let's just do those two as well. Alright, so there's the front bumper, all nice and shiny still. So there's definitely not a whole lot of damaged parts on this car apart from the roof. I think everything else still seems to be in fairly decent shape and it doesn't seem to be damaged at all. So yeah, the reason why we're taking all of these parts off is because first of all we are going to be respraying this vehicle, and second of all we are going to be sending all of these parts in for some ruby red chrome. So yeah, I'm not exactly sure if that is the right way to describe it, but yeah, we are going to be doing something special with all of the chrome pieces on this car, just to match what TC would like to have done to the car. Right, so there's our hood. Still looks very decent. So I think all of the painted parts, we're just going to put them on this side for now, and then we're going to continue with unbolting all of the painted parts, and also all of the chrome pieces still needs to come off. So there's a whole lot of work to be done to this car. So let's get this front fender off, and we're just gonna chuck it over here as well. Alright, I don't really want to bother with the paint. Doesn't matter if we scratch these panels because we are going to be respraying everything. Right, so for example, this trim on the fender will also be removed obviously, so we need to send that in as well for chroming. So that is, yeah, it actually sounds wrong calling it chroming because we're not going to be chroming it because it's already chromed. We are just going to be, yeah, sort of re-chroming it into a different color. Alright, so let's see. Alright, so there's our valance, or I think our bumper support. That's actually the bumper cover. So the valance actually bolts down over here. Alright, so there's the valance. So same story with these blinkers, they are going to be turned into ruby red chrome. So yeah, there's quite a bit of work to be done to this thing. Even the radiator support, everything needs to come off. We need to send all of those parts in as well for the special ruby red transformation. Right, so let's get our doors off. So once again, there's a door mirror, and I think this emblem on the side, we'll also see if they can chrome the, or re-chrome the chrome edges on that. So we'll see. And also TC said that I should try and figure out if I can find out a new interior for this car, so that we can actually get the interior custom made as well for him. So he asked me to try and source the interior, and then he's going to probably get it sorted out on his side. So there's at least going to be a little bit of assistance from him as well. Alright, so let's see. I remember the trunk has got a little small bolt in the middle, and that frees up the trunk lid. Alright, so there's the trunk lid, and this car actually has got its strips on it as well. We'll probably figure out something to do with that as well. But let's just continue with our bolt-on parts here. We're gonna unbolt the rear bumper, and I'm just gonna pop it down over where the chrome bits are. So yeah, we've got a lot of sorting to do as well with all of these parts. Alright, so let's see what else we can unbolt. I don't think there's anything else we can really unbolt, so the rest of the parts will be probably cut off of the plasma cutter. So I think let's start with this quarter pound over here. We're just gonna cut all of the obvious welds. And that one. Right, so that is off. Right, so there's our quarter panel for the rear left. And let's go around to the other side. I think let's maybe cut off this middle panel first. And just put this over there by the painted parts as well. So we are going to be respraying all of the body panels. So we need to sort of still separate everything. Alright, we're just going to cut off this quarter panel as well. There we go. So the quarter panel is off. And there it is. Right, so let's see what else we need to cut around the back. We've got this taillight panel. I think this actually comes off if you cut these two welds. Right, so there we go. That's our taillight panel. Alright, let's just put it down over there for now. And then the last part, well, second last part, I don't know if the front cowl part is actually part of the firewall or if it's a separate part. I can't really recall, so we're gonna just check it out quick and see if we can get that part cut off. Alright, so this is the part in question. Alright, let's come around this side. And there we go, so we've got this front cowl panel off. So that is also going to be painted. And yeah, this car is quite stripped very far, but there's still a lot of pieces we can take off. I want to try and get this rocker panel off just like that. Alright, nice and simple. I see we do have a little bit of dust left on it. So I didn't wash this thing 100%. But I think it's at least looking a little bit better. Right, so there's the other rocker panel. So yeah, that is definitely, yeah, making some progress over here. Right, so what we should probably do with the rest of the panels is just leave them intact for now, because they need to be chromed up as well. So we're going to see if maybe we can start stripping off some of the suspension parts. So we've got some a lot of those things called jack stands. I believe that's what they call these things. So we're going to try and put the car up on jack stands. So we're going to basically strip the front and rear suspension off. So I want to see if we can get those jack stands under this car. It'll be quite nice if we can actually just support the whole body or the chassis, whatever's left of it, on jack stands. So I really hope these are going to work on this car. So let's give it a little bit of a test over here. Alright, so that jack stand is in. And let's grab the next one. Alright, so we've got the two jack stands on this side. So that means that the car will at least be resting on those on this side. And we've got two for the other side as well. So let's get it lifted up and put the jack stands up under it as well. Alright, there we go. So the car is completely, yeah, resting on the jack stands now, which leaves us to basically go bonkers with stripping the suspension of this thing. And we're not going to have any problems with that then. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with the suspension on this vehicle, as far as I can tell. But however, yeah, as you guys know, TC wants everything custom painted. So this is going to be, yeah, basically stripped off just for that purpose. So we're going to go ahead and just remove everything from the front suspension here, like the shock absorbers. And then I think we should be able to actually get this whole front crossmember removed. We just do the opposite side here as well. Alright, then we'll do the upper control arm. Get that out of the way. Alright, so there we go. That is completely stripped. And now we're going to undo the crossmember bolts over here. And also the brake hoses. Should free it up a bit. And then we've also got the engine mounts that we need to undo. So let's just get that unbolted. And over here on this side as well. And that hopefully will free up the front suspension. just like that. So we've got our front suspension completely removed. So I really need to go ahead and strip everything off of this so that we can get this front suspension basically in all of its individual components. Which reminds me, I shouldn't forget to pull out those torsion bars. So let's grab our pry tool quickly. Alright, so there we go. Let's pry this side out. And also this side. Alright, so there's our pry tool doing its job. Perfect. We've got our torsion bars out. And let's move over to the rear of the vehicle. So I think before we start stripping the actual rear suspension, let's just get this drive shaft off first of all. There should be 3 bolts in total. Just gotta figure out where they are. And we'll do the same on the rear, on the differential there. Alright, so our drive shaft is free. Alright, so let's just pop that down over there. Alright, so now we just need to get our shock absorbers removed over here. Let's just get to that nut as well over there. Here's our one rear shock. Going to rip this one off as well. And we'll just put it over there. Alright, and then the brake hoses. And then I think if we just undo the 4 leaf spring bolts, let's just remember this thing is also gonna need to go somewhere. Right, so that's our main brake line. Alright, let's continue with this. Let's just undo these 4 bolts. And there's our rear suspension free. Right, so we can once again also go ahead and strip that completely, because we need to get everything painted up in this custom color ruby red. I'll just have to double check on the specifics on this build, because I think some of the parts needs to be silver, some of them needs to be ruby red. So it's going to be a very time consuming thing for us to figure out. I might have a little bit of leverage to do my own thing here and there on some parts. So we will definitely try and do a good job for TC. Right, so there we go. We've got our rear fuel tank, or actually just the only fuel tank in a car. And then we're gonna also remove the seats so that we can see clearly what's going on with the floor pan and if there's any damage from the accident to that as well. I don't think there should be any damage because it looks like this thing just rolled over a bit. So let's get these seats removed. I'm just gonna put them down over there. And yeah, we are gonna have a lot of work to sort out all of these parts. Alright, so let's just take this seat off as well. Alright, so there we go. That is our seat out from the passenger side as well. So yeah, there's not a whole lot left of this car. So I'm actually thinking we should probably strip the engine out. We are going to remove the exhausts, because these also need to be custom painted or powder coated. I don't really know what they call it if you paint an exhaust, because I know exhaust actually, it's not really any type of paint you can put on exhaust because of the temperature. But yes, we are going to see what the guys are going to do with that, because I'm going to probably send everything in for its special chroming part that needs to be done to it. Right, so we're just grabbing the fuel line over here, or not. We'll just let the fuel line do its own thing. Right, so there's our fuel line. And I think the last few bolts would just be the ones for the battery or the power cable. There we go. Alright, so this engine is going to go into our 1970 Chevelle. We'll see if we get to this today. I don't know if we're going to actually manage to get to the engine part of this yet. But yeah, I do know that engine does need a bit of oil, so it's definitely going to be something we'll have to check once we start putting it into our Chevelle. Alright, so let's see what else we can do. We've got as I said, we've got a lot of parts we need to strip off, nitty-gritty stuff. Like the radiator over here, we can also remove this. That is also still in very good condition. So this will probably also be yeah, modified a bit. I don't know what we're gonna do with everything. We'll still figure that out. All right, let's get this cable removed over there. There's our battery wires, still in very good condition. All right, so the transmission, we're probably gonna have to get those bolts removed in order to get the transmission out. So there we go. So that is our transmission, and then yeah, there's not a whole lot of parts left on this car actually. So let's lean in here. We are going to strip the steering column out. Right, so there's the steering column free. Alright, and I guess we will probably count this as an interior part. All depends on what TC wants to do with the interior bits on this vehicle. Alright, so next up we're going to need our screwdriver. We are going to remove the dashboard. Alright, let's go around to this side. And we'll just get the lower dashboard removed. Well, there's a very slight chance that this may have got a bit of damage, but yeah, so far it actually looks quite decent. Alright, so there's our dashboard. The upper part, just get that off as well, and we'll just pop it down over there. And now we are going to need our wrench once again, so let's grab our wrench. We are going to lean in here. We're just going to undo the pedals. Alright, so that is quite a bit of a teardown we are doing on this car. Alright, so this gear stick can also come off now. Alright, so with the last parts on this thing being the handbrake cable and also the brake booster, I think we have nearly stripped this whole entire car apart. Right, so there's the 2 bolts for the brake booster. And there we go. This charger is actually nothing more than just a shell at the moment, so we can probably go ahead and just remove these leaf springs at the back here. So there's a little cavity for the bolt over there, and we've got a bolt over there, and that is our leaf spring on the left. And then we'll just do the same on this side, just get it removed from here as well. And that is our leaf spring. Right, so there we go. This 1968 Dodge Charger has been basically completely stripped now. It's just a matter of cutting these few panels apart, but I think we're going to do this in sections. So I'll probably cut the front parts off first. I think we can actually do that now, because I don't want to strip this thing all the way and then we're going to struggle getting this thing put back together. So I think if we maybe cut the radiator support off, it'll be safe, because that way we can at least send the front parts of this thing in for its special paint job. Let's just see, we've got 2 welds down over there. Let's just get that one cut off as well. Alright, so there's our radiator support, and we also have got the lower radiator support, which, yeah, it kind of makes sense why this is separate, but there we go. We'll just keep these parts separate then. Alright, so next up we are just going to cut these 2 front panels off. And I think that one should actually come off. Unless, yeah, there's probably a weld down there we are missing. So let's just cut it off there. And there we go. So that's our front inner fender for the right hand side. So that can also be done up in that special chrome paint that we are talking about. Alright, so there we go. Let's just cut this one off as well. And we've got the weld over there to do. And there's our front left panel. Now this one actually has got a battery tray mounted to it, so let's just go ahead and strip that off as well. Alright, so there's our battery tray, and we've got our front left panel. We'll just put it here with the rest of these parts that needs to be sent in. Alright, so that has been quite a bit of a job, and yeah, there's literally parts scattered everywhere in this whole section of our yard now. So I think the next part we can do is probably start stripping the suspension parts, and yeah, we still need to pry off all of the chrome bits from these interior or exterior panels rather. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff to do. So I think let's just dive in with the rear suspension. Gonna start by taking the old wheels off. Yeah, these wheels are actually still in very good condition. So we might actually make an offer on these wheels. I don't know if they're gonna suit our 70 Chevelle very well if we do decide to keep them for ourselves. It all depends on what TC wants to do with the old parts. So I might have to ask him a bit and see what he says. Right, so there's our caliper removed. Alright, so let's get our handbrake cable off here as well. Yeah, this thing doesn't want to sit still, so it's a bit hard to take parts off if the part is actually moving about. Alright, so let's get our differential stripped off. Alright, so next up we've got our brake discs we need to remove. So for that we're going to need our screwdriver, which is probably still in the toolbox. So I just want to slowly but surely clean up after myself as I'm finishing off with a part. We'll just put it back where it's supposed to be. Actually tipped this thing over for some reason, but okay, there we go. Right, so let's get those brake discs removed. And yeah, we need to be careful because there's a lot of parts everywhere, because I just kicked this rear tire all the way over to onto the door over there. Hopefully there's no damage inflicted on that. Alright, so let's grab this one. And then we're just gonna grab our wrench again. We need to get these hubs off. Alright, let's go over to this side. Alright, so there's the hub. Perfect. So we've got our rear axle completely stripped. So as for the brake calipers, we'll also probably send those in for this special coating that we need to put on them. I'm not too sure exactly what's happening with the suspension parts themselves. I think they are also getting a whole new conversion, or yeah, coating or something over it. Alright, so there's our front suspension. Let's also tear this apart. Yeah, man, we are really going to be having parts everywhere across this whole floor of ours. But let's remove these front wheels. Let's get this brake caliper off as well. Alright, brake caliper is off. Tie rods. Let's get these tie rods off. Alright, so let's strip this wheel off. And let's get this caliper removed. Alright, so we're just gonna keep on unbolting parts, because there's just a lot of parts on these suspension components. Alright, so there we go. This is also coming off. We've got our lower control arm. Let's just undo the steering box. We'll do the steering link. Free that up. We've got our steering arm over here. And we're just going to keep unbolting things. And there we go. So we've got that taken apart. And that's our lower control arm. Alright, so just like that, we nearly stripped this whole front end suspension. So we just need to get our wheel hub removed over here from the hub carrier. And then we'll do the brake disc as well. Just get our screwdriver once again. It's probably still close by. I just need to figure out where it is. Oh, there it is. All right. And let's just unscrew the brake discs. All right, so that is basically everything stripped off. We've got everything taken apart on the suspension. So yeah, this is definitely going to be one heck of a job. Right, so I think while we've got our screwdriver in hand, we're just going to unscrew the taillights. And also the reverse lights, they can also be unscrewed. And also that taillight. Alright, so we've got all of those removed. And let's see what else we've got. We've got our dashboard, which is disassembled. So that is part of the interior parts. So we definitely need to sort all of these things out. Alright, so we'll just put those there for now. Alright, and I think all of the parts we need to pry off, I think I'm going to leave that maybe for a bit later. We've got to definitely tackle our 70 Chevelle a bit. Alright, let's just see. These headlight covers, they actually do pop open. Let's just see. There we go. So that one is open. Because we need to unscrew these as well. Alright, so they both are popped. I just want to know if we're going to be able to get these screws removed. Alright, so there's the one. And I can't seem to find the other screw on this one. Alright, let me just see. There it is. Alright, can we get it removed? It should fall off. There we go. Alright, and we've got some headlights. And we're probably going to be changing the color of these chrome pieces around the headlights as well. That's definitely going to be a very small detail. So we'll definitely keep our minds to this and try and sort out everything as good as possible. Alright, so the front grille is completely stripped now. We do have those covers on the back of the grille, I think. I'm not sure. Let's just grab our pry tool quickly. I just want to make sure there's no extra parts on this grille. There they are. Alright, so let's pop these off. Alright, so yeah, man, we are definitely going full into this build. There's going to be a whole lot of parts. Like these parts we need to still pry off. We'll also get this stripe removed for now. Gas filler cap. And that piece of trim. And we've got all of the interior parts still mounted. So I still need to remove that. But I think we are going to do that maybe a little bit later off camera. Just see if I can sort everything out and get it into sort of a little bit of an organization going here. Because everything is just scattered all over the place at the moment. But yes, I do want to start working on our 70 Chevelle just a little bit. I know there's going to be quite a bit of work to this as well. So let's first of all just gather our tools, because I've got tools laying everywhere now. We've got our wrench over here. And there's our screwdriver. Alright, so let's bring this a little bit closer to this side for now. And then we'll also grab our toolbox. Alright, so we've got our toolbox. And then, yeah, we're probably going to have to lower this car down a bit for us to remove the whole front section of this car. Alright, because our goal is to try and replace the firewall and then try and put everything back together again. Almost sounds like a Humpty Dumpty theme, but there we go. Alright, so let's grab our wrench over here on the floor. And let's just see what's happening with this front fender, if this is going to come off without a fight. Alright, and there's the last bolt on the front fender. So we've got our front left fender out of the way. Alright, so yeah, let me just put this exhaust a little bit closer to the charger so we know which vehicle that is from. Alright, so let's think. We don't really need to take the radiator off as such. We might not even have to take this front grille assembly off just yet. We can just grab our plasma cutter over here. Alright, let's see what happens if we cut this section off. Alright, so there's another weld down here as well. Alright, same on this side. We'll just cut it over there and over there. And we've got one over there. And there we go. That is our radiator support with the grill sort of attached still. So that is not too bad. We've got that sorted out at least. Over here on the one side, I noticed we've got the battery cable stuck to that. So we just need to unbolt the battery cable from there. So let's just do this. And then we'll grab the cable. Alright, so the cables are still very good, so that is a good sign. Alright, so let's remove the battery tray as well. Actually, no, we don't need to, because this part is going to come off in one piece. We are going to be welding this back into place once we get the firewall replaced. Right, so let's come under here. We're just going to cut it off over there. And over there. And probably that one. Right, so there's our front left inner fender. And we'll just do the same thing on the right hand side. We're just going to cut these three welds off. Alright, so there's the front right inner fender. Alright, so now we've got a lot of things we need to undo. So we've got our wiper motor over here. This is going to come off. Alright, it might actually be easier for us to remove these things once the whole firewall has been cut off. But I think, yeah, let's see. The brake booster over there. Alright, so that is loose. Okay, well, let's try our luck and see what happens if we cut this firewall off. Alright, so there we go. We've got the firewall removed. Let's just put it down over here. And there are still quite a bit of parts attached to this. As you can see, we've got our doors attached still. We've got our dashboard in there. So let's just grab our wrench as well. Right, so we're going to need our wrench for the doors. But let's see if we can get this dashboard removed. It's definitely going to be a bit tricky with this door. Doesn't want to open over here. Okay. Let me just see if I can find that last screw on this dashboard. Alright, so the dashboard is free. And that just actually knocked the whole door open as well. The dashboard actually looks very good. So does the cluster in this thing. So that might have actually been replaced. Alright, so let's get our door removed. Alright, so there's the passenger side door. And this firewall is definitely not going to stay put. So we need to be careful. Once we take a part off, this thing is going to tip over to a different direction. Just like that. Alright, so let's remove our steering column. Alright, steering column is out. And yeah, this thing is going to keep falling over. So let's put it down like this. Right, so here we've got our handbrake lever. Probably going to stay there for a bit. Alright, there's our pedals. And our wiper arm. Let's just see if we can get that off. There we go. Right, so there's our firewall. It's been removed. And this is going to go straight to the trash. Or over to Steve's pawn shop. Alright, so now the next part of this whole setup would be probably to start putting things back together. So we are going to replace the floor pan as well on this car at a later stage. So I think if we can get the front end sorted out from the firewall to the front end suspension, all that sorted, at least this car is going to be in somewhat of a mobile condition. So let's go ahead and grab the firewall. Just going to pop it into place here. And then we're going to need our welding machine, which is still inside the garage over here. It's all the way there. Right, so let me bring this a little bit closer. Alright, so here's our welding machine. We are just going to start welding up this whole firewall. It's just a matter of remembering where all of these welds were. I think, yeah, we should get all of them. We just take our time. And there we go. That is the last one for the firewall. Alright, so let's put that back down there for now. Let's just move the welder there. We're going to need this front right panel again. Alright, so that is in place. Alright, let's put the welder here for now. And let's just weld up over there. And also down there. And there's the third weld over there. Right, now we need this one. And we'll just weld it over there, there, and also down there. Alright, so that is looking very good. We are making some good progress. Now I'm looking for the radiator support. Where did I put that radiator support now? Oh, there it is. Okay, so we need this next. We're going to be able to get this car put back together, hopefully. Alright, so yeah, obviously I need the welding machine. So there it is. Right, so let's give it a weld over there and there. Up there and over there. And these two. Alright, so that should secure the front end of this car at least. So yeah, this is looking very good. Alright, so we've got quite a bit of parts to reinstall on this thing. I think what we can probably start with is all of the nitty-gritty parts. So we're going to need a new wiper motor because that one is shot. So I will definitely just have a look at all of these parts we just took off now, especially like the steering column. It's also on its last legs. We've got a decent handbrake cable. Pedals look quite worn. Wiper linkage is also bad. So yeah, we've got to definitely order some new parts. Right, so we're not going to mount the doors just yet, but we are going to mock up our fender that we got from the junkyard. So let's get our fender on just like that. And where's our other one? There it is. Right, so there's our fender. Alright, so that is starting to look like a car again. Right, I think before we put our hood back on, let's just get our suspension into position here. We're going to bolt up these two bolts on this side. And over on this side, the same story. Alright, so we do have some new upper control arms. So let's grab one of the new ones for this side. Just going to bolt it down over there. And we've got our brake hose and also that. And as well as the tie rod bolts over there. I think that is still tight. Everything else is tightened down over there. Let's do our tie rod over there. And it's just zip down. Okay, that actually needs to come off because we need to replace this upper control arm as well. Right, so this is the old crusty one that was stuck on the car. Alright, so let's get that out of the way. Alright, let's grab our new upper control arm as well. Alright, let's just bolt all three of those bolts down. And we did get the brake hose as well, so that is definitely coming together. Let's just grab our front shock absorbers as well over here. Get that into there. Let's just zip it down over there as well. Very good. And the last one over here. Front shock absorber for this side. And now we can lift this thing up again. Just like that. I think that should do the trick. Let's grab our front bumper. Alright, front bumper is into place. Let's grab our front grille. That can also go in for now. We're going to need our screwdriver, which is somewhere. I do know it was here. Alright, I found the screwdriver. So it was all the way over there. Okay, so let's quickly remember what we were trying to tighten down. I think it was this insert of the grille. Alright, but we are going to go ahead and remove this whole grille assembly again. So the reason for that is just easier to get to these screws for the headlights. So let's undo the headlight over here. And yes, it's starting to get dark because we started this episode a bit late. So let's grab our new headlights. Well, not really new headlights, but these are the headlights we got off the junkyard as well. Alright, and this one is also still very good. So we'll just bolt that one down. And I think the other two that we got off the junkyard is better than this one. Alright, so there's the next one for the inner side. We'll just put it on there. And we've got another decent headlight over there. Let's just bolt it down or screw it down like that, and our grill can go back on. And let's just screw that down again. Very good. Alright, so returning to some suspension work, I just noticed that our new torsion bars are laying over here. So we're gonna just come and pop out these old ones. So I've got no idea how good or bad these ones are, although this one actually looks brand new. Let's just check this one as well. So it looks like we may have ordered these things for no reason. So yeah, we're just gonna return the new ones that we got from Little Lewis's store. I don't think we're gonna have to replace them. So we'll just send these back, because obviously I just ordered everything that I thought I was going to need. So there we go. We've got quite a lot of work done on this car already. There's still a lot of work we can do to it. So let's maybe just grab our hood, and we're just going to start buttoning up a few things, because it's definitely starting to get a bit dark. Right, so there's our hood. Alright, so with our hood in place, I think it's about time now that we grab that engine. I think if we can get that engine dropped in and bolted down, then yeah, we should actually be golden, because then there's not really much to get this car up and running. It's going to be a matter of replacing the gearbox, because we still have a spare 5-speed gearbox kicking around, so we'll definitely get a gearbox mounted. We do also have got a very decent starter for it, so that's not going to be a problem. Alright, so let's grab our wiring. Wiring over here. Let's just get that into position. And we've got a bolt on the alternator over there. The ground cable. We're not going to do the gearbox bolts, because obviously we need to replace it. There's the starter bolt. Alright, so we can actually remove the starter quickly. I just want to check it. Right, so that starter is still very good. Alright, so I think while we are at it, I mean, it's just going to take just a minute. Maybe not. Let's just get this car lifted up a bit. Alright, so let's get this drive shaft disconnected from the transmission. And there we go. That is our old gearbox removed. It's also a 5-speed which has been broken. So let's go and grab the one from our 69 Impala. Alright, so we'll just remove the old starter from this, because this gearbox is still very good. Alright, so let's put it down over here. We're going to grab our starter and just bolt that down. Alright, and let's grab our gearbox and just bolt it down over there. Let's get the ones on the drive shaft done up as well. Alright, let's quickly lower it down again. And let's bolt up the transmission at the back. Alright. And there we go. So that is our engine installed. And this car is definitely starting to look like a car again. So I just want to quickly grab the two front wheels, because we've got the two front wheels laying under the table here. Although I am going to check with TC if we can get the old wheels off of him. The ones from his Dodge Charger, which are actually, like the General Lee wheels. So we're going to see if he wants to give it to us, or maybe sell it to us, or we just give him a bit of a discount on his work we are doing for him. Right, so there's our other front wheel. So let's just bring this around. Alright, and there we go. Alright, perfect. So we're just going to make a little bit of space over here, because we want to push this thing a bit forward so we can get those doors mounted. And then I think that is going to be quite a bit of work we did for this episode. Alright, so let's go down a bit more and get this lift arm out of the way, and this one as well. Around this side. And that one. Now we can just push it forward a bit. Alright, that should do the trick. Alright, so let's quickly continue with mounting some more parts to this thing. So there's our wrench over there. And we've got a very good dashboard. So let's get this old dashboard back in. Let's just screw it down over there. And this side as well, we're going to do the same. Alright, so let's quickly check our brake boost over here. The brake master cylinder is still good, so we can get that back in. Alright, it's easier to do it from the inside, so we'll just bolt it up there. And now we can grab the two doors. So we've got our passenger side door. And let's grab the last one. And there we go. So this is the final piece of the puzzle for this episode, guys. I think we've done quite a bit now. And I think we have achieved what we wanted to achieve. I don't think we've got a battery for this car. So we'll have to get a new battery for this car. And maybe some exhaust parts. Maybe just the two mufflers. And then, yeah, I think there's nothing really keeping this car from being fired up. I mean, it's just a matter of topping up some fluids again. I think the oil in this engine is still a bit low. Yes, as we checked it in the last episode. So that is going to be something we'll have to top up a bit. As well as the coolant. I don't think there's any coolant left in this radiator. This radiator has been sitting in this car for quite some time. Yeah, that is bone dry. So we'll top up some fluids. We'll also just double check on the brakes, if all the brakes are good at the back at least, because we know the front brakes are good. And then I think this car will actually be very close to being ready for its first test drive in many years, because it's been sitting for quite some time. But I think that is going to be a wrap for this episode. So thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate every view, every like. And also, if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. I will appreciate it very much. But yes, until the next time, cheerio!